In this lecture, we are going to add gradients to our theme. A gradient is very simple. It's an effect with two or more colors transitioning to one another. WordPress supports all CSS gradients. They can be applied to a wide variety of blocks. Interestingly, gradients are persistent. If a user has gradients and switches themes, the original gradients will survive from older themes. Overall, adding gradients to a theme is super simple. Let's give it a shot, shall we? In your editor, open the theme.json file. First things first, let's try hiding the default gradients from the user. Similar to colors, WordPress will provide the user with a preset of gradients. If you're developing a theme, you may want to recommend your own set of gradients. For our purposes, let's disable the default set of gradients. In the color object, add a property called default gradients with a value of false. Next, let's begin adding a custom set of gradients. Gradients can be added on a global level and block level. For our purposes, let's add a global level gradient. Inside the color object, add an array called gradients. In the array, we must add an object for each gradient. The format for a gradient is the slug, name, and gradient. Let's add our first gradient. The slug for the gradient will be called USummerDog. The name for the gradient will be the following: Udemy Summer Dog. Lastly, the gradient can be added through the gradient property. WordPress accepts any valid CSS gradient value. We can add linear, radial, conic, or repeating gradients. For this example, let's keep it simple by adding a linear gradient. Set the value to the following: linear gradient hash A8FF78, hash 78FFD6. Before testing our gradient, let's learn how to disable the gradient feature. I think the site title block doesn't need to support gradients. Let's disable it completely for this block, which has support for gradients. Scroll to the site title block settings. Inside the color object, add the gradients array. By adding an empty array, WordPress will not present the user with a set of gradients to select from. However, users will still be able to select custom colors for creating a gradient. We can disable the custom color picker by adding the custom gradient property with a value of false. These settings should effectively disable the gradient options for the site title block. Let's try testing our settings. Refresh the editor in the browser. Under the Global Styles sidebar, let's try changing the background color with a gradient. The list of presets will present us with our custom gradient. You can hover your mouse over the option for the name of the gradient. Perfect. Next, let's try editing the site title block. Unlike the Global Style sidebar, adding a gradient to this block is not an option. We've successfully disabled this option from the editor. Once again, feel free to explore gradients with additional colors and settings. We're almost finished with colors, I promise. There are just a few more topics to discuss before jumping into other areas of the editor. I'll see you in the next one.